So today is the 20th class of our course, and it is also our concluding session. So I'm sure that all of you would know that the first half will be a normal revision class. So we will recap all the rules, the 20 common errors and other rules which we covered on side. And the last half, inshallah, in the last half, we will be joined by the head teacher and our guest, and then we will do our concluding session. So let's start. So for today, I'm just going to go through all the rules which we have covered, and at the end, hopefully, if we have time, I will choose the students. So if any of you would like to practice a certain rule, or if you think that you haven't had a lot of chance during this course to come on the mic, then you can also raise your hands. Okay. So I will start with short vowels. This was our first lesson where we covered the rule for short vowels, that we should not prolong short vowels if a letter carries a fatha, dhamma or kasra more than 1 second count or beat. And we shouldn't replace one stroke with another. So kutiba, each stroke is equally long for 1 second. So the next lesson was about long vowels. And the rule for long vowels is that do not prolong a letter which carries a long vowel. So a vertical fatha, inverted dhamma, or vertical kasra more than 2 seconds, counts or beats. And they are also known as fatha ishbaiya, kasra ishbaiya, and dhamma ishbaiya. So after that, we covered letters of elongation, huruf al-madda, and we covered that there are 3 letters of elongation, which you can see in this example: Vaw madda, Ya madda, and Alif madda. So the rule is, the rule for letters of elongation is that if Alif Sakin is preceded by a maftuh, so we can see here, if a Vaw Sakin is preceded by a madmoom, so we can see here, and if a Ya Sakin is preceded by a maksur, then it should be prolonged for 2 seconds, counts or beats. So after that, we did letters of soft elongation. So this is a little different from letters of elongation because in this one, we only have Vaw and Ya, and the preceding letter will always carry a fatha, unlike letters of elongation. So in letters of elongation, the previous letter carries a different stroke depending on which huruf al-mad we have. So for Vaw, we specifically have a dhamma on the previous letter. For Ya, we have a kasra. For Alif, we have fatha. But for letters of soft elongation, huruf al-leen, we will always have a fatha on the previous letter. The rule is the same. If Vaw Sakin or Ya Sakin is preceded by a maftuh letter, it should be softly prolonged for 2 seconds. So the length of elongation is the same, 2 seconds. The only difference is that this time we are going to prolong it softly. Yawmaini. So that's the difference. Then we did stressing and nasalization. So mushaddad and ghunna. So mushaddad means hardened, and a mushaddad should be stressed appropriately to indicate the doubling of consonants. So we should stress on a mushaddad letter to make a clear double sound. For example, if there were 2 letters, so ba, sa, so we can say that there is a sa with sukoon followed by a sa with a fatha. Ba, sa. Okay. Then we did nasalization or ghunna, which means that we have to sustain a nasal sound. And the nasal sound should be sustained for 2 seconds on meme and noon mushaddad. So we have two letters of gunna, which is meme and noon. And when they carry the shadda sign, we should stress on them, and we should also make nasal sound. And this should be for 2 seconds. So mim, in. So a lot of times what happens is that when we are reading quickly, we do stress on the letter, but we don't make the nasal sound. For example, mimma or inna. So that is wrong. That is a very common error which we should try to avoid. Okay. So then next we covered letters of Qalqalah, huruf al-Qalqalah. And the rule for huruf al-Qalqalah is that we have to make a jerking sound. And we know that we have 5 letters of Qalqalah which are given here. Qaf, Ta, Ba, Jim, and Dal. And an easy way to remember these 5 letters of Qalqalah is to remember these 2 words, Qutbu, Jaddin. So if you remember these 2 words, you can easily recall these 5 letters, and then you can apply the rule. So we also covered the different types of Qalqalah depending on the location of the harful Qalqalah. So if the letter of Qalqalah is carrying a sukoon mark and it is within a word, then we are going to do a soft Qalqalah. If the letter of Qalqalah is carrying a sukoon, however, this time it is at the end of a word, not in the middle of the word, then we have to do a moderate Qalqalah. Lastly, if we have a letter of Qalqalah at the end of a word, however, this time it is not sakin, it is not carrying the sign of sukoon. Instead, it has a shadda sign. So it is mushaddad. So if we pause on a mushaddad Qalqalah letter, then we are going to do a strong Qalqalah. Tab. Okay. So next we did huruf at-tafkhim or thick letters, and we covered the 7 letters of tafkhim, which are as follows. So we have kha, sad, dad, ghain, ta, qaf, and za. And again, there is an easy way to remember these 7 letters. So we can just remember these 3 words, qussa, daghtan, qiz. So if we remember these 3 words, we can easily recall these 7 letters and make a thick and broad sound whenever we come across them. So apart from these 7 huruf at-tafkhim, we have 2 exceptions. So we have the lam mushaddad in the word Allah, and then we have the letter ra. So now we are going to look at the cases in which we should make these 2 letters thick. So the lam mushaddad in the word Allah should only be pronounced with a thick and broad sound if it is preceded by the vowel mark of fatha or dhamma. So we can see here in these examples, we have the word Allah, and then alif is carrying a fatha. So we have to make the sound of lam thick. Allahu. In this example, the alif is sakin. So we look at the previous mutaharrik letter, which is lam, and it is carrying a fatha. So again, the sound of lam should be broad and thick. Whereas this middle example, we can see that the previous mutaharrik letter is carrying a kasra. So in this case, the sound of lam is going to be thin. Billahi. And I just want to clarify here that this rule is only for lam mushaddad in the word of Allah. So for example, here, this kind of, when we have this kind of lam, example of lam mushaddad, we will not make it thick. It will always be thin, no matter what. So the next exception is the letter ra, and the letter ra should be pronounced with a broad and thick sound in the following cases. So firstly, if the letter ra carries a fatha, as you can see in this example, Rabbana. Okay, or if it carries a dhamma, so here we have Ra, it is carrying a dhamma. In this case, it is also going to be thick. Or if the letter Ra carries the tanween of fatha or tanween of dhamma. So we can see in this example, it is carrying fathatan. So in this case, it is also going to be thick. And I just want to mention here, it can carry fatha, dhamma, or its tanween with or without the sign of shadda. So as we can see in these examples, here we have the sign of shadda along with the dhamma stroke. Here we have the sign of shadda along with the fathatan. Here we don't have the sign of shadda. So regardless of the sign of shadda, these are going to be thick. So in the next case is if Ra is sakin. So here we can see in these examples. Okay, not this one. Here we have Ra, it is carrying a sukoon, and the previous mutaharrik letter, which in this case is mim, is a madmoom. So if the previous mutaharrik letter is a maftoof or madmoom, the Ra sakin is going to be thick. So in this example, we have al-qadri. This is the original word. However, although originally Ra has kasra, but when we pause on this word, so this is from Surah Al-Qadr. So when we pause at the end of the verse on this word, the Ra will take temporary sukoon and it will become Al-Qadr. So in that case, the Ra is also going to be thick because the previous mutaharrik letter is carrying a fatha. And in this example, we can also see that we have Ra. It is originally it carries a fatha, but when we pause on this word, it will take a temporary sukoon. And because the previous mutaharrik letter is carrying a fatha and followed by alif madda, in this case, it is also going to be thick. So we can go into a lot of detail with this rule specifically. If Ra is sakin or acts as sakin upon waqf and previous mutaharrik letter is a maftuh or madmoom, we can go into a lot of detail. But because this course, this is the first time we have organized this course, and there are students with different levels of knowledge, that's why we won't go into too much detail. But this is, if you know this, it will be good enough. So the next one is if Ra sakin is preceded by a maksoor and followed by a mufakham letter. So again, Ra is sakin and the previous letter is carrying a kasra. However, the following letter is a mufakham, and that is what ultimately decides that Ra is going to be thick. Lastly, if Ra sakin is preceded by Hamzatul Wasl, which is blank alif. So as you can see in these examples, that Ra is sakin, but it's preceded by Hamzatul Wasl. So we can also go into a lot of detail with this one as well. But again, as I said, this is a course, a basic course. So we won't go into too much detail. But as long as you remember this, if Ra sakin is preceded by Hamzatul Wasl, you have to make Ra thick. So this should be good enough. Okay. So next we have extended elongation. In extended elongation, we have two broad categories. So firstly, we have the medium long stretch, which is also known as al-maddul munfasil or small mad, choti mad. And then the other category is extra long stretch, badi mad or yes. So we will go into detail because there are two more categories in the extra long stretch. So firstly, with the medium long stretch, it is also known as al-maddul munfasil, and it is called detached elongation because it concerns two letters. So the first letter ends with a harful mad or their equivalent long vowel. So we know that alif, harful mad, is equivalent to vertical fatha because their sound and the length of elongation is the same, 2 seconds long. So the first letter ends with a harful mad or their equivalent long vowel. and it is followed by Hamza Alif. So we can see in this example, we have Alif with a Dhamma. So Hamza Alif is just Alif with any stroke. So in this case, we are going to elongate or prolong for 4 seconds approximately. So the next one is Al-Maddul Muttasil, and it is also known as attached elongation. And the reason why it is known as attached elongation is because it concerns one word. So in one word, we have a harful mad followed by the letter Hamza. In this case, we should prolong for 4 to 5 seconds. So the last one is Al-Maddul Lazim. This is one of the categories of extra long stretch, and this is known as compulsory elongation. This should be prolonged for 5 to 6 seconds on disjointed letters or haruful muqatta'at, as you can see in this last example. So each of these haruful muqatta'at is going to be 5 to 6 seconds long. And secondly, if a harful mad is followed by a sakin or a mushaddad letter. So in this example, we can see that Alif, which is harful mad in this case, followed by Qaf, which is mushaddad. So we are also going to prolong this for 5 to 6 seconds. Okay. So next we covered the rules of Noon Sakin or Noon Tanween. And there are 4 rules concerning Noon Sakin and Noon Tanween. So firstly, we have Idgham, which means assimilation of Noon Sakin or Noon Tanween. And the rule is, if Noon Sakin or Tanween is followed by one of the above 6 letters, so we have the 6 letters here, the sound of Noon should be merged. So the 6 letters are Ya, Noon, Meen, Vaw, Ra, and Lam. However, we have 2 types of idgham, 2 types of assimilation. So the first type is idgham kamil, that is where we are going to merge without gunna, so with no nasal sound. And idgham kamil is applied on the letter Ra and the letter Lam. The second category is idgham naqis. This is where we are going to make a nasal sound, and we have to make it for 2 seconds. So we are going to make a nasal sound or gunna for 2 seconds. And this idgham is applied on these 4 letters. And again, we can remember these 6 letters if we remember these 2 words, Yan, Mu, and Ril. So we can easily recall these 6 letters if we memorize these 2 words. So when we were doing idgham, we also did idgham of Lam Sakin, and there are 2 rules for idgham of Lam Sakin. Firstly, the sound of Lam can be completely merged. Secondly, it should be manifested. So now we are going to look at the scenarios in which it should be merged or manifested. So the sound of Lam Sakin should be completely merged when followed by a mushaddad sun letter, Hurufush Shamsiya. So there are 14 sun letters. And then the second rule is Lam Sakin should be manifested when followed by a moon letter, Harful Qamariya. And we can remember the 14 letters of 14 moon letters or 14 Harful Qamariya if we remember this phrase. Ibqi hajjaka waqaf aqima. So if you later on focus on this phrase, you can see that there are 14 letters exactly. So if Lam Sakin is followed by any of these 14 letters, in this case we have Qa, then we are going to manifest the sound of Lam. And an easy way to identify this is that Lam will have a sukoon on top. So Al-Qamaru, the sound of Lam is manifested and it's clear. Whereas if it's followed by sun letters, then the sound of Lam will be merged. Ash-Shamsu. So the sound of Lam is not audible. And an easy way to identify this one is that Lam will be followed by a mushaddad letter. Okay. So next we did Izhar of Noon Sakin or Noon Tanween, which means we have to manifest the sound of Noon. So the rule is, if Noon Sakin or Tanween is followed by one of these 6 letters, the sound of Noon should be pronounced clearly without any elongation or nasal sound. So here are the 6 letters: Alif, Ha, Ain, Ha, Ghain, and Kha. So in this example, we can see Noon Sakin is followed by Hamza, which is here. So the sound of Noon is going to be manifested. Yan, Auna. In this second example, we have Noon Sakin followed by Alif. So again, it's going to be clear. And then in this last example, we have Noon Tanween, Dammatan followed by Alif. Again, it's going to be clear. The sound of Noon is going to be manifested. Okay, so the next rule concerning Noon Sakin or Tanween is Iqlab. And the rule is, if Noon Sakin or Tanween is followed by the letter Ba, then it will change into Mim Sakin. So the sound will change into Mim Sakin. The sound of Mim Sakin should be softly prolonged with a light nasal sound for 2 seconds. So, as you can see in this example, it is very easy to identify Iqlab because normally in Quranic text, the Noon has this miniature Mim on top. So, So we have to do nasal sound for 2 seconds. Okay, so the last rule concerning Noon, Sakin or Tanween is Ikhfa. This is where we have to conceal the sound of Noon. And the rule is, if Noon Sakin or Tanween is followed by any other mutaharrik letter without a tashdeed, excluding the 6 letters of Izhar and 1 letter of Iqlab, it should be pronounced with a light nasal sound for 2 seconds. So the nasal sound, it won't be as strong as Idgham. It won't be as strong as Idgham Kamil, but we still have to do a slight nasal sound for 2 seconds. So as you can see in this example here, we have Noon followed by Sod. And we know that Sod is not the letter of Iqlab, it's not the letter of Izhar, and it is not one of the letter of Idgham either. So we are going to do Ikhfa. Okay. So after that, in the second part of the course, we covered blank letters. So the rule for blank letters is that in wasl, which means continuation, blank letters should not be pronounced. They may appear between 2 words or within 1 word. So it is important here to see that blank letters can appear within 1 word. So in this first example, this is 1 word and we have a blank letter here, or they can appear between 2 words. So here we can see we have quite a lot of blank letters between 2 words. They are only maintained / pronounced when both words are read separately. So blank letters within 1 word will not be pronounced, will never be pronounced. So they will always be dropped or ignored. However, blank letters between 2 words, they can be pronounced if we choose to stop on the first word. So if we choose to work on the first word and continue from the next word. So as you can see in this example, this word in continuation, it will be pronounced as Anallahu. Okay. But let's look at this example. If we were to stop at the first word, Kazzabu, and start from the next word, then the blank letter will be pronounced. And as we covered the rules of blank alif, we know that if it's followed by lam, it will always take a fatha. So this will be ar-rusula. Okay, so I hope that it is clear. Then we also covered the rule for miniature noon. So the rule for miniature noon is that a small noon is only read in wasl, which means continuation. And if an alif madda appears before small noon, it should not be pronounced. So as you can see in these examples at the bottom, we have alif madda followed by a miniature noon. So if I read this in wasl, in continuation, I'm going to drop the alif madda, the alif of elongation. Qawmanillahu. Okay. If one pauses at the first word and continues from the next word, the small noon should be ignored. So let's look at the second example. If I choose to work from the first word and start from the next word, then I'm not going to pronounce the miniature noon. So, lahwa, and we know from the rules of blank alif that if the next mutaharrik letter carries a fatha or a kasra, the alif will always take a kasra. So, so here I also applied the rule of ikhfa because the noon sakin is followed by the letter fa. Okay, so now we are going to look at the rules of blank alif. So as I mentioned earlier, blank alif will always take a fatha if it is preceded by a lam, sakin or mushaddad. And we can again see in this example, al-maliku. Second one, if blank alif will always take a kasra if the second or third letter carries a fatha or a kasra. So, ittaqu. And then lastly, blank alif will always take a dhamma if the first mutaharrik letter of a word, of that certain word, carries a dhamma. Okay. Then we did Hamza on top of letters. So the rule for that is if Hamza mutaharrik appears on letter Vaw, so we can see it in this example, or the letter Ya, which we can see in this example, only the stroke which is harkat of Hamza will be pronounced, ignoring the letter underneath. Okay, then we did the rules of Mim Sakin. So just like Noon Sakin, Mim Sakin has similar rules, except this time it is called Idgham Shafi, Ikhfa Shafi, and Izhar Shafi. And Shafi means labial because it is concerning the lips. So Idgham Shafi is the complete assimilation of Mim Sakin into Mim Mutaharrik for 2 seconds counts or beats with a strong nasal sound. So as you can see in the first example, we have Mim Sakin followed by Mim Mutaharrik. So in this case, we are going to do Idgham, which is assimilation for 2 seconds counts or beats. Ikhfa Shafi is when Mim Sakin is followed by the letter Ba. In this case, the sound of Mim Sakin should be softly prolonged for 2 seconds counts or beats with a light nasal sound. So we can see in the second example, Mim Sakin is followed by the letter Ba. In this case, we are going to do light nasal sound for 2 seconds. Lastly, we have Izhar Shafi. This is when Mim Sakin is followed by any letter other than Mim or Ba. The sound of Mim Sakin should be pronounced clearly with no elongation and no nasal sound. So then we did rules of waqf, and here we have waqf bis sukun. So this is when last letter of the word bears a sukun and no change occurs in the pronunciation. As you can see in this example, one har, it will remain one har even if we choose to pause. Next we have waqf bil isbat. This is when a word ends with a letter of elongation. Again, no change in the pronunciation occurs. Then we have waqf bil iskan. This is when last vowel letter changes to temporary sukoon. And there are 7 cases in which the last vowel letter changes to sukoon. That is, if the last letter carries a fatha, a dhamma or its tanween, or an inverted dhamma, a kasra or its tanween, or an inverted or a vertical kasra. Then we have waqf bit tashdid. This is when the last mushaddad letter takes a temporary sukoon, but we still have to pronounce the tashdid, manifest the tashdid. So tab. Okay. Then we have waqf bil ibdal. There are 2 types, 2 categories in this kind of waqf, and this is where the vowel mark will be changed and sound will also change. So firstly, the change of tanween of fatha into alif madda or vertical fatha, and secondly, change of ta marbuta into sakinha. Lastly, we have waqf bil izhar. This is when we pause on a word ending with noon sakin or noon sakin, and this will be read with izhar. So we know that if it's followed by a letter of iqlab or a letter of ikhfa, we have to do a slight nasal sound. But because we are going to pause on the word, it doesn't matter that it's which letter it's followed by. We are going to manifest the sound of mim sakin and noon sakin. Okay, so we have already ran over the time. So I think head teacher is here with us, and I'm going to hand over to him for the concluding session. Assalamu alaikum.